I was waiting. I was
Go right back to what that job was.
the job, the tension, the anger. Well, the bigger you are, the more politics. Personalities. When you're a little fish, you can kind of swing back on other people. When you're a big fish, it's like you're the target. Oh, there's a flounder. I like flounders. Yum yum. I didn't mean to go back that far. I just didn't notice how much relaxed it is.
I don't know if it's in your department, but I would recommend turning that song.
Oh, that's kind of easy. I had a guy who was one of my mentees, and he acquired the mentee. And he was a policeman. One of us. He was a senior non-com. He had learned to take care of his officers. He tried to take care of his boss. She was a hot shot there. Let me take care of his boss. So I had to train him. I said, when you try to help don't give her any advice. She doesn't believe you because you were just don't do that. It just set himself, because that was his weakness. He said, yeah, he did. He did. Because it was just like his mindset was set up different. And so keeping his mouth shut, and not at least survival. Because otherwise he was going home and kicking his dog. Because no matter what he did, oh, I can be acting for you when you're like, no snowman's chance in hell you can be acting for me. Yeah, it's that kind of thing. Can't smother the pillow. So Robert, there can be no criticism of what I do. If there are any questions, I'm referring to you. Boy, they don't some people with everything,
Did you put the ones?
I put Duracells in for you. They're fresh.
Great, excellent. So, all right. So this is
Good morning, dear friends. Is this on? Yes, I think it's on. Great. Okay. Again, so wonderful to see so many of you and some new faces today. It's fantastic. Thank you. Today we will be hearing from our parishioners that are already involved professionally in ways that can help us prepare logistically for the end of life. But before that, I'm going to share with you another poem. It's in your, it got handed out today. And this actually came to me by way of Peter Feibelman. Thank you so much, Peter. And it's I think it's quite an arresting and beautiful poem by Mary Oliver. It's called When Death Comes. When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me, and snaps the purse shut. When death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, towards silence. And each body a lion of courage, and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. So, lots to think about there. So, with no further ado, I'm going to invite Roy to come up. Thank you so much, Roy. You're going to need to hold this or get it close to your mouth. We need to readjust for your height. You do it. Excellent. Thank you.
All right, am I coming through all right?
Not yet.
Nice and close, right?
He's going to crank it up a little bit, Roy. All right. Just 1 second.
Okay. All right, how about now? Any better? All right, okay, good. Welcome, and thank you all for coming. I'm Roy Baldwin. I've been a parishioner here since Bob Dennick's days, and I am an attorney. I do people's wills and estate planning and so forth for them. I have a firm in Oakton, and I've been doing these since 1976. So I've seen a lot of mistakes, and hopefully I'll be able to tell you how to avoid a few, including a famous one, which you'll read about in your edition of the Washington Post this morning. I'll touch on that in a minute. I've got 20 minutes. I'm going to cover 4 subjects: advanced medical directives, powers of attorney, wills, and I'm also going to add living trusts. How are you doing? A little closer? All right. Now we got it. All right. Okay. Here's a note of caution. You do not have to take notes. Everything I say here is on the outline, or it doesn't matter. Except there will be times when I'll tell you to write something down. You can go ahead and write it down. All right, advanced medical directives, also called advanced directive and a living will, although that's a bad, not very descriptive title. Oh, in your binder, yes, look in your binder, it's there. The outline is in your binder. All right, the purpose of an advanced medical directive is to tell the doctors what to do if you can't tell them yourself, and you are either sinking fast and you're not going to live long, or you are in an irreversible coma, and you have your wishes as to what should happen. Frankly, it doesn't matter to me if you say, pull the plug and let me die, just keep the morphine drip going, or if you say, leave that plug in the wall, I believe in miracles, and let's let it play out for a while. It doesn't matter as long as you say what you want when you're able to say it and you're in your right mind. Go down now to the fourth bullet point. And here's what I'd like you to do. Underline where it says Terry Schiavo and Karen Ann Quinlan, just underline those. And in the margin write Google. If you want to know why people should have advanced medical directives, look at those two cases and you'll see why. Some of you may remember, especially the Terry Schiavo case. There have been cases in Virginia where the governor got involved, for goodness sake, and used taxpayer money to frustrate the will of the next of kin, all because this person did not have an advanced medical directive. Again, it doesn't matter to me which way you go. It won't matter to your attorney. Just get it done now. Think about it and decide what you want, and be willing to live by that or die by it, and you're fine. Now, go down to bullet point 6. And next to this, write, check this out. This is something I learned as I was researching and preparing for today. The Commonwealth of Virginia has a website that will store your advanced medical directive. I had no idea, but it's there and it's up and running. I mean, I was aware of it, but it was always something that was going to happen at some point in the future, but evidently they've got their act together. And it's available, so if you go to it, and the website, write this down, www.vdh, that's Virginia Department of Health, I think, .virginia.gov. That's where it is. Go to it, check it out, and it may be right for you. I'm going to check it out tomorrow morning, and we'll see. It may be a good answer to the question of what to do with your important estate documents. There is also a state form, which you'll find. That's the 7th bullet point. It's okay. It's a little busy. It combines an advanced medical directive with a healthcare power of attorney, which I don't like to do. I like to keep the advanced medical directive nice and clear. It directs the doctors what to do. There's no argument. There's no discussion. There's no room for decision making, because I feel that's too much to put on the children at the foot of the hospital bed. I would rather do a separate healthcare power of attorney. So that gets down to the next one. Power of attorney in case of disability. This is about the only kind of power of attorney I write these days. In the olden days, when somebody would be posted overseas for 90 days, we'd do a power of attorney that said that their spouse could sign important documents while they were gone. Then came the internet, and now it doesn't matter if somebody's in Afghanistan or on the moon. It doesn't matter. You can get their signature on documents in a heartbeat. So we don't do very many straight powers of attorney anymore. Instead, we do powers of attorney that are contingent. They say, if I'm ever in a situation where I decide that I need help with my financial affairs or any other lifelong affairs, then the rest of this goes into effect. Or if I'm ever in a situation where my doctor has certified in writing that by reason of mental disease, injury, or advanced age, senility, dementia, that I'm incapable of properly managing my affairs, then this, read on and you'll see what happens. Yes?
So, Roy, clearly we always think of that as us and our partner. But do you recommend we do that for our adult children who aren't married or have children? Or?
Yes, everyone should have one of these sooner or later. Oops.
I'm going to just suggest that we hold questions so that we can let Roy get through, and then, because some of the stuff may also get answered, and then we'll give time for Q&A. Okay? Thanks.
Yeah, I would say anyone over the age of 18 should have these first two documents. The power of attorney and caseability, not as important a document until, frankly, you get into middle age. But, you know, you're much more likely to need a power of attorney in case of disability at age 85 than at age 35, unless you fall off the billy goat trail and land on your head. You know, so when young people come to me, I say yes, advanced medical directive, definitely, and the rest of these we'll see. Go down to the third bullet point, and you can correct my typo. It's override your AMD, not your ADM. Sorry about that. The final bullet point, forms are available on the internet, but please don't use them. These forms either are done by people who don't wish you well, or even if they do wish you well, they are not Virginia specific. We have our own ways of doing things in the Old Dominion, and it's best to have an attorney draw one up. They're not that expensive. All right, next is about wills. I would like you to write right next to the will this phrase: if I don't have one, the Virginia General Assembly, you can put VAGA, gets to decide. And then put an unhappy emoji next to that. I've met our General Assembly, and I don't trust them with my estate planning. I want to write it down. So a will can do everything that you want to do. It can say what you want to have done for your funeral, memorial service, whether you want to be buried or cremated, what you want done, of course, with your property and your debts. It can be as simple, it can be fairly complex, it can be, it can have trusts for children or grandchildren, but it's got to be in writing. And I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At the seventh bullet point, I would underline that or put an asterisk by it. If you're going to be dividing up your estate, think in terms of percentages rather than amounts. I mean, you may say, I'm going to leave $5,000 to the Church of the Holy Comforter, and that sounds great. But maybe in 40 years, it's not going to buy all that much. So instead, maybe Holy Comforter would say, I'm going to leave 1% of my estate to Holy Comforter, or maybe more, maybe 10%, you never know. But think in terms of percentages rather than specific amounts. And also, if you must give away specific items of personal property, wedding ring, something like that, make sure it is something that you will die with, that you will still have when you go. And also make sure that the person that you are going to leave it to actually wants it. I am the executor for an estate, a lovely elderly lady who went to great lengths to say who would get which parts of her CD collection. Nobody wanted them. And that was a shame, because she spent some time saying who would get what. Ask them first. And I would also put down, why don't you just give it to them now? You know, I mean, really, if there's something that, if there's China that you got, well, China, nobody wants China. If there's something that you got, that means a lot to you, and you want a person in your life to have it, give it to them. Tell them why it's important, and have them say thank you right then and there. Anyway, make the will as simple as possible. Has to be in writing, has to be signed by you with 2 witnesses. It's best if it's notarized. You have to set up trusts for people that are underage. here's an important one, appropriate compensation for the person who's going to have to do the work, because there is some work involved in probating an estate. You could say the person I name as executor gets 5% of my estate for the faithful completion of their tasks. That will make it easier for one of your children to take on the tasks. Put it in a safe place where it can't be, I say, lost in air quotes. And you know, one of the most satisfying sentences that I can utter in my career is a sentence that starts out according to. And sure enough, in your today's issue of the Washington Post, I can say, according to Michelle Singletary, who was writing about the mess of Aretha Franklin's estate, she says, when you fail to plan for your death, your heirs may end up fighting. I would say will end up fighting, but it's the same thing. She writes, I cringe at the amount of money and heartache that went into this family feud about Aretha Franklin's estate. And you can read more about the mistakes that Aretha Franklin made, but I'll just quote one of the headlines, which is, don't store your will in the couch. You can read the rest in the Washington Post. Put it in a safe place, and this goes for all of your estate documents. And this gets back to the question of whether this statewide Advanced Healthcare Directors Registry might do the trick. I don't know, it might. In the meantime, I do it old school. When I do an estate planning set of documents for people, I ask them very nicely if I can put the originals in my safe deposit box and give them documents that are clearly marked. This is a copy. The original is in the Baltimore Law Firm safe deposit box at the Truist branch in Oakton, Virginia, where I believe I have the largest safe deposit box in the village of Oakton. And that way, especially, I mean, frankly, let's be frank, you might want to be disinheriting one of your children. That's a possibility. If you were going to do something like that, you don't want the original of your will to be anywhere near, to be anywhere where that person can find it and lose it. All right. I mean, it's happened. It happens, and families get torn asunder because of these. People get shot, people get stabbed, and worse. So once you make up your mind, give the lawyer your documents, and say, put them in your safe deposit box. Or if you have a safe deposit box yourself, go ahead and put them in that. Virginia does have a law making it easy for your heirs to get into your safe deposit box. They have to go through a little bit of a ceremony, but it's not that bad. Finally, and put an asterisk by this, review it every 3 years and revise it as necessary. You do have to take it out every once in a while and look at it. And you think, oh, Harry, that's right. He was born. Yeah, we should put him in there. All right. And I'd like you to also add a bullet point at the end, avoid internet forums. Just write that down. Again, people on the internet either do not wish you well, or even if they do, they don't know Virginia procedure. Wills are not that expensive. Let's go to a lawyer and get it done right, get it done in the proper form. And once you get it done, make sure you know where it is, and if you do need to change it, make sure the new will specifically says that all the old wills are no good anymore. That's the real problem in the Aretha Franklin estate. Now, finally, I want to add something for you about living trusts, because living trusts, have been a big topic. I would say, of course, we just finished saying have an attorney do it for wills. So between or after living trusts, put down, but not the attorney who invites you to a free meal at Maggiano's. I know these guys. And their deal is they will write you a living trust. Some of you may have them. You know that they are 200 pages thick. And the only people who can understand what they mean when it's time to use them are the people who invited you to Maggiano's. They are expensive, they are cumbersome, and frankly, I have clients come in to say, get me out of this. I'm tired of dealing with it. Now, that's not to say that living trusts are avoidable. They are, in some cases, very good, and the outline sets forth some of the ways that living trusts are useful. I will say that what I do a lot of is family trusts. Let's say husband and wife, they have some property, maybe they have a business, they have some investments, maybe they have properties overseas or in other states, and they have children, they have grandchildren, they have big responsibilities. They can do what is known as the Baldwin Family Trust. And Roy and Sharon are the trustees. And we say everything on Schedule A that's titled the name of the trust is in the trust, and we appoint ourselves as trustees to do with this property as we see fit. And then when one of us dies, the other is the successor trustee, and and then you write down what provisions are made. And then when the second one dies, the children are successor trustees, and they can carry on the family trust. It's like an LLC or a family corporation. It can be immortal. The great thing about a living trust is that, as the first bullet point says, it's very useful for avoiding the cost and effort of going through probate. Your survivors will thank you. The reason is that the end result of having a living trust is that there should be nothing left in your probate estate. Probate estate is whatever you have left in your own name alone. All right. That means that when your children go to the clerk's office to sign up, the clerk will say, well, okay, how much was in this estate? And they'll say, well, nothing. And the clerk will say, well, then you don't need to do anything further. Just give me the original of the will. We'll register it. It'll be in our records so that any title searcher searching title to the properties can see that he died. And that's it. A minimal amount of probate tax, a minimal amount of clerk's fees are paid, but they don't have to do any of the further steps in probating the estate. They will thank you. Believe me. The question is, the cost of doing a trust is about the same as the cost of, it's maybe 1/3 of the cost of probating a estate. So it is worth it, but it's money you pay now rather than money that your heirs have to pay in the future. It's an idea. It's not for everybody. Avoid the 200-page brand. Go see a lawyer who will do one for you of 10 pages or so, and will also sign you up for looking at it and caring for it and feeding it from time to time, because it does need more care and feeding than a will. Hopefully I got that done in 20 minutes. I will turn it over to Kip.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'll talk with this.
You need it for the live stream,
My
Kip.
soccer voice usually works, but that's okay. I'm Kip Braley. I know most of you, and I'm so happy to see such a great turnout for this. This is such a good idea and long overdue in the church, and I think as evidenced by how many people are here. Excellent program. I'm Kip Braley. Some of you know me. If you're looking for the spelling of my name for your will, that's KIP ANDREWBRAILEY. You can add me to your wills. Roy can take care of that. When I was coming today, I was reminded of my old workplace where we used to have this thing called the Dawn Seminar. And what you did was you went for a couple days and you got talked about how you could retire, and they brought in experts from all over. But I worked for a very nefarious agency, CIA, and at some point during the Dawn Seminar, they always had somebody come in who made a pitch for you to fill your work-shaped hole. Now, I've heard of a God-shaped hole, which is probably why we're all here, but the work-shaped hole was come back to work as an annuitant for the CIA and declassify documents. One of the most boring, incredibly boring things in the world, but they had a very ready audience for it. So when I was coming here, I'm thinking, well, I'm here to pitch for the endowment fund. So the church has done this great job of sponsoring this, and now I'm going to ask them for money. Not a whole lot of money, but just this is what I'm doing is I'm just giving you a reminder that this is something you can do. And if I get anything wrong, my boss, the chairman of the endowment board, is here, and he will smack me with a 2x4. So the endowment fund of Holy Comforter, I think, is one of the great success stories of Holy Comforter. I am amazed at how wonderful those who set it up have done. It consists of several funds. It's set up so that we never touch the principal. There's some great handouts in your book which explain everything you need to know. But basically, the proceeds from the fund are enumerated for specific purposes. The bulk is in an operating fund, and last year it was used for, or this year it's being used for $23,000 of the new air conditioning for the sanctuary. I think we all can get behind having the sanctuary air conditioning replaced. Probably it will be quieter. It can only be used for capital improvements. It can't be used to fund the operating fund. One of the other funds, which I had the privilege of running this year, was the Carroll Stock Book Fund. We funded $200 grants. I think it was for 11 graduating seniors at Holy Comforter for books that they will use in their studies when they leave here. All of them were very active in the church. That's kind of the entry into it, and it was set up by a wonderful woman who was a teacher and got some money, and you can still contribute to it. So Holy Comforter's Endowment Fund was started in 2001. Through wise stewardship and your contributions, it is over $700,000 now. And that seems like a whole lot of money. But compared to other endowment, I always like to bring it in the competition, compared to other endowments for churches, it's not. But it's growing, and I can tell you, I'm new to the endowment board, but I was the senior warden, junior warden, so I saw them in action. It's a very well organized fund. The money grows at a very conservative, but until recently, rapid pace. And I think that this is the future of the church. Having this endowment fund makes all those blips and ups and downs so much easier when you have that, $23,000 for the AC or money for other things. And people have set up funds. There's a fund that deals with youth. There's another fund that deals with the training of staff, people's personal. So if you have a big chunk of money and you want to contribute it so that we can do a better job at something, this is your opportunity. So my final pitch is, when you're doing the Roy Baldwin will or whatever, prayerfully consider the church. This is a way that you can make either a one-time or a recurring gift, or as a bequest in your will. And I think if you make a bequest in your will, become a member of we mentioned Bob Dennick before, of the Bob Dennick Society. And we have I think we're going to have our luncheon again this year in the fall. So I think all are welcome, but if you're a member, then we'll put you at the head table and fet you no end. So as you're doing your financial planning, think about the church. Whatever the amount or the percent, it's always the right color, but not always the right size, but it's always the right size for you. So choose wisely, but just consider us, prayerfully consider us. And I think I'm under time, so thank you.
Okay, one more quick practical thing, and then we'll have times for you to ask questions. One of the things you picked up when you came in is this personal and financial information packet. These are pages from the diocesan Are Your Affairs in Order document. It's a 64-page document, so we didn't print the whole thing out. But one of the pages in your materials shows you that you can go to the diocesan website and look at the whole thing if you want. But these pages are ones that I found extremely useful. They're very simple. It's just a place for you to fill in all your family and financial information, so that if you go home today and you get hit by a car on your way home, and your kids are there trying to figure out how to carry on, they will have all this kind of information in one place. This is the other reason we gave you a binder. We hope you'll fill this out and put it in your binder and keep your binder on your desk, So you have that available to people who need to know this information if anything happens to you. Besides family information, it also includes things like physician, accountants, various other things. But if you turn halfway through to page, it says 15 at the bottom, this is something I want to bring up because Roy talked about it. It's location of important documents. Where you keep these things is important, and people may not know where they are. I've had friends who, when their parents died, spent weeks going through boxes and files and looking for this kind of information. So having a list of where you keep these things is extremely helpful. One of the things, for example, I had written down in the information here was the phone number of, for me, of the State Department retirement office. Because when my husband died, I had to notify them that he was no longer living and that I was going to get my survivor benefits. But instead of having to go through files and files of looking for this information, because we had done this program back in 2011, I had all this information in one place. So it's very helpful in that way. So this is just something, if you want to fill out, we recommend that you do it, but that's up to you. I also want to say, I know that some of you are coming here for the first time, some have been through, some were here last time. The things that were in the binder, we did reproduce those, and they were stapled packets at the back. There were 40, and maybe more than 40 people, so if you didn't get something, please let Peggy know, and we can make extra copies. Also, for those of you who last time wanted a copy of the book, Hard Choices for Loving People, we did order more of those and more copies of the 5 Wishes documents. So if you didn't get one last time, please let Peggy know and you can pick one up there. And now over to Ann.
So this is a lot of material to throw at you, but now is the time for your questions, your concerns. And yes, okay, great. And we might want Roy to be close by, since Roy is likely to be able to answer some of them. Peter, and you're going to be, because we're recording this, we need to hear your voices, which is why we're going to wait until we have a mic. Yes?
Last week, I learned that in the case of someone in an ambulance, their intent for what to do in hospital care was conflicted by their child. And I thought to myself, is there legal standing for a card in my wallet that says, if unconscious, this is what I'd like to have happen in the hospital? There's something in my wallet with my signature on it. Does that have legal standing?
Roy, come here, in front of the microphone.
Well, I guess it depends on what the card says. If the card was signed by you and dated and has witnesses, then it's an advance medical directive, and in my view, it would be binding. Now, I think that in the ambulance ride, in the space of that time when you're talking about some EMT techs, frankly, they're not going to stop pumping the chest until they get to the ER. But at some point, a doctor, will read that and say, well, this looks like we're bound by it.
I saw another hand. Joanne.
How important is it for your executor to live in the same state where your will has been filed?
All right, so as far as where the executor is, it's best and most convenient if the executor is a Virginia resident. However, now, because of the internet, we can have an executor anywhere around the world. I've got an executor of a will who is in Israel, and we're going to be doing an audiovisual internet probate appointment in a couple of weeks or so. So it's not that bad. The only thing is that if the executor is not a Virginia resident, then somebody who is a Virginia resident or an attorney has to be either the co-executor or what's called the Virginia registered agent, I think, or the local agent. Somebody that, if the circuit court wants to reach out and grab somebody by their collar and haul them in and say, explain what's happening with this estate, they can do that without having to go over state lines. So I would say, in deciding who the executor is, just make it the person that you feel it should be. It should be somebody younger than you, somebody that's good with money and figures. An eldest child would be the natural choice, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a Virginia resident.
Any other questions? Yes. Morgan, we need a microphone.
I'm asking for a friend.
Yes, friend.
At what point do you think it's important to establish the living trust? You know, if you have a lot of property or if you really don't, like what is the distinguishing balance between it's necessary and unnecessary?
Okay, well, as I say in the outline, it depends. I mean, some people like the idea of leaving nothing behind to worry about after they're gone. It's like the Mary Oliver poem. It's a comfort to know that when your kids go down to the probate department, it's going to be a 15-minute appointment, and then they're going to leave and go out and toast your name, because you saved them a lot of trouble. That's a perfectly valid motive for doing a living trust, whether you have property or not. Now, in terms of the more property you have and the more diverse it is, in terms of amounts and kinds and places, especially places, because if you have real property, let's say you have a house here and you have a beach house in the Outer Banks, right? It's a different state, and it's best to have a family trust, because that way you will avoid having to go to probate in North Carolina. You can get it all done in Virginia. The more complex your situation is, the more people are involved, the more like working parts, like a small family business or a large family business, anything like that, the more you would tend toward a family trust. Or if you just don't want to fool with it all, just to have a nice simple will, that's fine too.
Don't go far, Roy. Go ahead. Brian.
What's your opinion of 529 for grandchildren? Would that be in your estate?
Well, a 529 account is like an IRA for education, and it says that if you put in money, for a period of years, it can accrue interest tax-free, and then it has to be used for somebody's college education or some other advanced education options. And it's great for grandchildren. My grandson Nicholas has a 529 now, funded by people who love him, and so it's great. But it's not part of estate planning. I mean, it's something you do now as opposed to in a will.
So I have a question about the probate process. My understanding is that what you have to put through probate is going to get taxed, correct?
And it's not that bad. The probate tax in Virginia is $1 per thousand. It's an irritant. And on the other hand, $1 million, $1 per thousand. That's some significant money.
Right. So if you had a $1.5 million house and you hadn't put it in a trust, then it would go through probate and get taxed, correct?
If you put the house in one of these living trusts, then it will go according to the terms of the trust. It is not part of your probate estate. So when the children go down to the probate clerk and the probate clerk says, "What's in the estate?" they say, "Nothing," and nothing gets taxed.
So Roy, I have a quick story about my dad. He passed about 10 years ago, but from the time he was maybe 65, 70, He kept telling us over and over again exactly how he wanted his estate managed. He had the house in the name of his 3 kids, and he had the right to live there. His wife had certain rights, but he was very clear about it, to the point where every time I visited him, he would have a conversation with me about it, and I asked him if he was in a hurry, because he kept talking about it. But everything, also all his personal belongings, his car had his wife's name on it. We never had to go to probate, because everything had another person's name assigned to it.
Okay.
Or do you create a list with your clients defining what needs to be retitled into a living trust?
Well, yeah, we have to do a list of what's going to be on Schedule A. Schedule A is a document at the end of the trust that says, this is what goes into the trust. And so, you need to list it, or else it's not in the trust. And for that matter, if there's a family home that's listed in your name and your spouse's name, then we have to do a deed, which gets titled, recorded in the land records, and so that the house is now in the name of the Baldwin Family Trust. In addition, we have to make sure that the insurance people, the title insurance people, or if there's a mortgage, the mortgage company needs to know about that, because there may be an implication in your mortgage or your deed of trust about what happens if the title changes hands. They need to be assured that everything's okay, and that if there's ever any problem, and not only that, but the property insurance people. You need to tell State Farm that the new owners of this property are the Baldwin Family Trust, because if the roof blows off, then they want to know who to write the check to. So that's why I say living trusts require some care and feeding that wills do not. But it may be important in the long run.
And that would hold true also of investment accounts, as well as if a life insurance policy was naming that trust as a beneficiary.
Yes. You got to make sure that they're all properly titled, or else it's not like the trust is of no force and effect, but it's of less effect. So the more and for that matter, that means when you buy a new car, you got to decide: do I want to own it in my name, or do I want the family trust to own it? You got to think about that. And so it's more trouble for you now, but there may be a payoff at the end.
One item on cars. As you know, Virginia gives a personal property cut for a privately owned car. I had put the cars in my living trust name, and then the Virginia tax people said, hang on, that's now a business. And so they wanted to charge me the full business, the full amount. In the end, I did get around it by giving them a copy of the trust, but that's quite a kerfuffle. So I don't know whether this is still a problem, but you may want to look into that, sir.
That's a good point. Thank you. While the microphone's being passed around, I would like to add something to Norma's personal and financial information. Right at the top somewhere, password for your phone and for your computer.
And for your accounts, if you need people to get in.
And for accounts, if you need people to get into them. Put them someplace where they can be found. A lot of people, they have a significant presence online, not only financially, but maybe they have a book, maybe they have important things going on online. But people, if you don't know their password, you can't get on their phone, you can't get in the computer, you won't be able to find out about important matters. Yes, go ahead.
Are there tax implications whether you use a trust or a will? Are there tax implications between the trust and the will? Does one save you money over the other is what I'm asking.
A living trust is not a tax advantageous document. In other words, it's not supposed to be to save anybody taxes. I mean, that's the answer in a nutshell. Your motive for doing a living trust is not going to be to try to save taxes. It'll be to try to save expenses of probate and so forth.
Bill?
Hi, Roy. What about digital assets? You know, people's social media accounts, emails, and all that. Is that dealt with routinely now in your business?
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, you know, we used to say to people, the executors of the estate, the survivors, well, just watch the mail, you know, for the next 90 days or so, and anybody that thinks that your loved one owes them money is going to be sending you a bill. You know, send them nice letters back telling them what's happened, and then bring them all in, and we'll sort through them and decide who gets paid. That's not true, because now I find that this is the reason why we need access to the computer, is because everybody's got all their utilities and so forth on auto pay, and so you've got beneficiaries coming to you saying, turn off the auto pay, turn off the auto pay. I don't need Netflix on my mother's TV anymore, and it's not a big deal, but it's $25 a month or whatever. Turn it off. So everything is digital these days. That matters, and so we've got to hop onto the digital issue right away, just to stop the draining of the auto pays, if nothing else. But there's so much more that's online now. You really have to have access to the computer. Yes.
I have a question. I set up a trust about 10 years ago, and
Closer to your mouth.
this way.
Yep.
All right. I set up a trust about 10 years ago, and have since inherited some royalties, which now are not included in my things that I set up. How do I go about that?
Well, the trust can be amended anytime. So anytime there's a reason for doing something different, or going in a different direction, or adding a paragraph, or taking one out, you can certainly do that. The best thing to do would be to contact the people that did the trust for you. I guarantee they've got the form online. They can redo it, and for that matter, Schedule A, that you can add properties to it, take properties out, in whatever way is best for you.
You bringing up mother's account has to stop making automatic payment. Took me back 18 years when my sister, who was executrix for her mother, found that she had inadequately called for 4 death certificates. It was incredible to her how many death certificates were needed by a number of people. And I'm wondering, is there a digital death certificate these days? Because I could see some account holders saying, how do we know your mother really died?
Yeah, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, there is no digital death certificate in Virginia. In fact, the death certificate is printed on legal-size paper. So it's just really hard to even send a copy to somebody. Most of the time, though, the bank or the insurance company will just want to get the copy. Or you have to go down and you have to show the copy to the person, and they make a copy of it, and then you get to keep the certified copy. So these days, we just ask for like half a dozen, because after the first 3 are free, and the next, however many you want are like $2 a piece. It's not that big a deal, but unfortunately, no digital death certificates at this point.
Roy, I have a question. Do you recommend appointing a co-executor, like 2 executors, or someone who would be successor if the first person is unable to serve or has already passed away?
Again, that depends on your particular situation. If I have, let's say I'm unmarried now, and I have 2 children, and I want to leave my estate to each child in equal shares, the best thing to do would be to name them both co-executors. That way, they both have to agree as to what happens in the estate. On the other hand, if you've got a more complex situation, it may be best to have one person as the executor who's in charge of everything, and everybody else does what they say. It all depends. But you should definitely have a successor executor in mind, because you need to think not only about, in your will, not only about what happens if you die tomorrow, but what happens if you die 20 years from now. Where will people be? Will they still be able to take care of things? You need to have somebody you can name as a successor executor if the executor is unwilling or unable to serve, and maybe even somebody after that, and maybe even at the end, an institution, like a large bank that has a trust department, to say they're the backstop. If nobody else qualifies, then Truist Bank can do it. They'll charge for it, but there'll be a backstop.
If you don't have anyone that you can appoint as an executor, I have no family. So I'm in the process of having documents drawn up, but I don't know what to do about an executor. Yeah.
And in a situation where no natural person springs to mind, one idea is, well, let's see, who are you giving your estate to? Let's say that I'm giving my estate to Hogwarts, okay? And I'm also going to name the headmaster of Hogwarts as the executor. It makes sense because they've got a motive, for making sure that the estate gets properly and swiftly administered. So that's an idea. Figure out who you're going to leave your estate to. If it's an institution, then to say they can be the executor as well.
And that's not considered a conflict of interest?
Now, the question is
Not considered a conflict of interest?
No, not at all. No. In fact, it gives them a motive for making sure that the estate is swiftly and swiftly wrapped up.
Roy, my parents had a condo in Arizona and a home in Vermont, and they had to get 2 different attorneys, one for each state, to create an estate deed so that I was named as the sole thing, so that it didn't have to go through probate. But I just wanted to make sure people knew that you have to do it in the state that the property is. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's certainly one way of doing it. Now, if there was a family trust, then in both of these places, the owner of the property would be the family trust, and so the mere fact that one of the trustees passed away is irrelevant to that particular piece of property. Literally nothing needs to be done. So that's a good thing about having a trust. It eliminates the need for a separate probate of property in other states.
All right.
They all want to go off and read Michelle Singletary now.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Roy, and thanks to Kip, who is, I don't think, still, he's with us in this on the planet, but he's not with us in the room. So, super helpful information. And next week, so this is all great, and I'm so glad that people are wanting to get at some of the nuts and bolts of the things that we need to do. It's super helpful. And my task next week is to look at our psychology and our spirituality as we contemplate our own death. It's really an important piece of what we are here to do. I don't think there's anybody in the room who will not die. And it comes sooner or it comes later, right? So we just don't know. You just don't know. Things could change in a second. So, spending some time contemplating that, and also taking a look at what happens to our faith lives in the last chapter of our life, whether it is a short one or a long one. So we're going to be looking at that and talking a bit about that. And I want to say one of the greatest gifts that you can do for your family is to plan your own funeral. And we're going to provide forms for you that we have that you can keep on file here at the church, or make a copy, keep it with your important papers. It's just such a gift. Plus, if you love liturgy like I do, you can put all your favorite stuff in it. And now the other thing that I do, because I, of course, sit with a lot of families after the death of somebody, I'm like, yeah, they wanted that, but you get to change it if you want to. Because, of course, the funerals are about the people who are left behind. Right? So it's this interesting dance that we do, where both we get to say, and I will say in terms of scripture readings and hymns, it is so powerful to be able to say, these were the ones that, my dad asked for. And it's just so fabulous. And it also saves some of the anxiety that can happen after somebody has died, because you've got all these decisions that have to be made. So that's but that's just part of it. The other work is and I want you to think about this before next week, what happens to our faith life in what I call the fourth quarter, right? Fourth quarter faith. That's what we're going to be talking about. So have a lovely afternoon, stay dry, go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.